Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How's everybody doing today? Today is the 7th of the month already. Can you believe it? Feels like the year just started, and uh, and we're already in May. Wow, time's flying. Um, yeah, so it's another. Today was a beautiful day here. Um, in Connecticut. Beautiful, beautiful weather. Shelton and I was out today on the motorcycle, riding around a little bit. We did a little bit of, husbandry with the tanks. We rode over to Max Reef, got some reagent for the Trident, and also today my both floss filter fleece came in, so hold on, let's get Shelton on here real quick. Yeah, so I got the floss, my filter rollers, which filter rollers are amazing. I love them. You don't have to deal with all the gucky sock and washing them in your kitchen sink or your what up.
Ah, ah,
I was just telling everybody we were, riding around today and, I did a little bit of work on my system here with, you know, changed out the filter floss on my rollers. I have the clear four, which, those are amazing. I love them. And also I, swapped out my reagent in my Trident. Yeah. So what up, man? What's going on? What about you?
I'm good, bro. I guess I spent a good portion of the day. Me and you was on the road a little bit, the motorcycles and stuff. So, I don't know if anyone knows that, but we ride. We're riders. So, for anyone that didn't know that we ride. We get excited when the weather's good because we get an opportunity to be outside. So that was good. Um, I guess if we lived next to the ocean that had big waves, we'd be surfers too. You know what I mean? We like,
Exactly.
all right,
Um,
but yeah, everything's good, man. Do you have any of the filter floss? Did you put both of them in already or no?
yeah, I did. I did
Yeah.
both.
Yeah,
So
just like maybe show some of the viewers that didn't have, that never seen them before, so they can see what it is. Maybe next
because
time, yeah.
I
Next time,
talked
yeah,
I tossed about also. Yeah,
yeah.
but so one of my things this week, I did some tests on and my numbers, alcal was fine. Which I do keep my numbers. I write everything down. I keep track of everything handwritten under here and under my tank. So I'm kind of old school. I know that the Apex can do it, but literally, this is what I do, and I keep it under the tank. And so I did some tests the other day, 5.4, 3 days ago. My ALK was 9.8, calc was 425, nitrate 18.1, mag 1500, and phosphate 2.50, which is ridiculous for phosphate. I posted the numbers, and people were like, "What? Are you sure the numbers are right? Did you test that again? Test it again?" And I tested it again the next day, and it was the same. I think it's actually higher than that because the meter was flashing. It kept on flashing, so I think it was even higher than that. And one of the things I wanted to know is chasing numbers. Is it really worth it if your stuff is doing great? You know what I'm saying? Like your all your fish, your corals, everything is doing great. But when you do a test, your numbers are ridiculously high and or low, and it's just crazy. Is it worth it to chase those numbers? What do you think, Shel?
Um, just for anyone that don't know what chasing numbers actually mean, um, there's certain recommended ranges in which your system's supposed to have your measurements are supposed to be for your testing, for your calcium, for your alkalinity.
Let me grab the sheet real quick. I got a sheet right here.
So there are recommended values in which we're supposed to have a reef system set up at. We're gonna go over those in a minute. However, the chasing numbers is many of us reefers, we will listen to other reefers that we would say are more predominant or well-known individuals. Maybe we'll go on websites and things like that, and they will tell you that the ranges of your tank are either high or low. And many times we will just go ahead and say, oh, my system is off because it's not falling in range. And we go and make all the changes to get it in those ranges. That is what we consider chasing numbers. Now, the question is, do you do that or don't you? What are the pros of doing that and the cons of doing it? All right. So that's what we're talking about today. All right. So we're going to be talking about those parameters, what they're supposed to be, what are the expected ones, and do you chase? Right.
So I have a parameters critical to control in reef aquariums. Okay, and it's a little wet, and if it wasn't wet, I'd be worried because it's around water. So the first parameter they have on here, and they have reef aquarium recommendations, and they have typical surface ocean value.
Yes.
So the first one they have on here is calcium. So calcium for reef recommendation is 380, between 380 and 450 ppm, parts per million, right? And the typical surface ocean value is 420 ppm. So mine, what did I say mine was? Mine was around, let's see here. Mine was 425. So I guess I'm in the okay because a lot of people go for 420. That's where people usually hit for 420 because, like it says here, on the typical surface ocean value, 420 parts per million. So I'm okay where I'm at. And to be honest with you guys, I'm okay with my numbers, whether they're high. I try to keep them in there, but if they do go crazy, I don't really, I either stop dosing one thing, shut them off on the apex, or go higher or lower depending on what the values that I get. But my corals are doing amazing. Their growth, their color, everything is amazing. And for my phosphate to be that high, everyone, I'm like, if it's not broken, why fix it? That's where I'm at. When's the last time you did a test? I know you have the Trident. What's the last test on the Trident?
The, the last time I did a test was maybe about a week ago.
Okay.
And I think it was you and I who were talking, and you said you were going to do a test because I know you test a lot. And I felt kind of guilty. I was like, when you said, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I haven't did a hand test in a while. So I did test. I think it was either last week Saturday or last week Sunday, sometime last week. My levels were a bit higher than some things. My magnesium now is, I just checked on my phone maybe an hour or so ago, was 1337. My alkalinity is at 8.5, and calcium is calcium is up a bit. And it's coming down. I don't know if you guys remember, I said it on the last show. We're just making a quick reference to where our tanks were. And last week mine was at 510, and now it's at about 470, 473 or 470.
All right, let's go with this first. What are your numbers where if you had like the perfect system and you're like, this is where I want my numbers? What numbers would they be?
Well,
keep your numbers at places.
For me, it's an in-between thing because I know the recommendations, the aquarium recommendations by some of the trusted sites. I actually have one pulled up here from Bulk Reef Supply, which are not far off from the ones that, I know you just went over the calcium alone, but I have an in-between. Huh?
What's the calcium on theirs?
There's the aquarium recommendation is between 380 and 450.
Okay, so the same.
So the same. And ocean value is 420.
420. I like to keep mine 420. What do you keep yours?
Mine's always on the higher side. So I generally keep mine about 440.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I want it to be. Generally, it's not. All right.
What's
My tank always runs high with calcium for some reason, and the corals love it. So, I try to not for it to not, spike, but generally it's usually about 460, 480. That's usually where my calcium buffers out. It generally never reaches down to 440 and stay for long. If it's there, it usually goes back up after a little while. My alk, I generally keep my alk around 4.3, 8.3. That's usually where I keep my alk, about 8.3. But once it's in range of anywhere from 8 to 10, I'm good.
so my,
I usually want it over 8, and I usually want it under 10. So once it's in those ranges, I'm cool.
mine I keep
But it's like
10.8. That's where I like
10.8,
9.8. That's where I
9.8. Okay,
at 9. Yep, 9.8.
yeah,
What's the so recommendation for alkaline here is between 8 and 12.
okay,
That's the recommendation, and the ocean value is 7.
7. Mhm.
7 kh. Yep.
And
So
and the
I'm gonna.
thing is, but you know what? It says ocean values, right? This is the thing that I always, debate about. And this is, I don't know, it's just me. We have so many different oceans across the globe, right? And we get corals and fish from all these different oceans. Now, even certain times of the year, certain locations in the ocean, all these parameters are different. Okay?
Yeah.
So, when we see these ocean values, what ocean are they talking about?
You
Right?
gotta you gotta take it with a grain of salt or a tank of
Exactly.
salt. You can't
Exactly.
okay, this is because I know people who have had their DKH at about 5 and their stuff was doing great.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
exactly who I'm talking about.
Yes, yes, I do.
So it's like, do you change if your stuff is doing well? Do you change your system to kind of match the recommendations, or do you stick with what works for
Mm.
you? That's my thing. And then again, a lot of the salts mix differently. If you take a bucket of instant ocean and a bucket of
With
reef crystals or
crystals.
anything else, you're gonna and you do a reading, you're gonna get different readings. So do you really want to trust these numbers or be a number chaser to say, okay,
Mm.
this is where I need my alk to be, this is where I need my this to be. So alk, their recommendation, the typical ocean, a surface of ocean value is 7.
So
I go for 9.8. You go for around. You said 8.
8.5 or somewhere around there. Yeah.
Um, Salinity, I think, is one of the numbers where a lot of people will kind of say, yes,
Mm.
that's it. You know what I mean? I think we all can say salinity is this number, and it's they're not far off. So usually I go for 1.025. All right, that's where I
Mm.
like to have my salinity. Um, what is BRS's recommendation for salt? Is it
B-
there?
BRS's recommendation for the aquarium recommendation for salinity is 1.023 to 1.26. And the reason for that, why it's on the lower end as well, is because they're also considering some systems that are mainly
Fish only.
fish. Yeah, fish only. So they're going from one extreme to the next. But I think though that those small deviations in readings can make the difference for some people because some corals are extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
As we know, we've lost a huge part of the Great Barrier Reef by just the temperature rising up like fractions of a degree, right? So can you imagine taking corals that out of the ocean, packaging it up, shipping it on planes for over 48 hours, getting it to a store, changing it from that water, putting it in another system, acclimating it to that water, then Rocks and Shelton comes along and says, oh, that one looks fine, right? We purchase it, bring it in our car, acclimates to the car temperature, and then brings it to, while we're doing this, it's not just the temp that's acclimating. We're just thinking about that. When it goes into the store, their system might not be at the same salinity,
Yeah.
right? the distributor might not be using the same salinity as the person that's harvesting it, right? And then when it comes to our system, may not be using the same temperature and salinity and the rest of the parameters as these individuals. So we have to take these things into consideration. When you look at your system and you see corals growing in it, it's a miracle. Okay,
Yeah.
it's nothing shy of a miracle. Okay, so for these parameters, like for bulk reef supply, saying that their range, and it's good that they're putting a range and not saying 1.26, 1.25. Yeah, they're giving you a range to let you know that, hey, it doesn't have to be one or the other. There is possibilities that your corals can do well in one versus at different levels. So we have to remember that. So if I go to Ross's house and I see his tank, which looks amazing, hard to see from the camera, but tank looks great. We always do this. Almost every single one of us say, hey, what are your parameters? Where do you keep your stuff? And
Yeah.
while that's good, do you think that we should follow that though, Ross? Do you think that's a good thing for us to do when we go to a store or go to someone's house, like, hey, where do you keep your parameters? Do you think that's a good thing?
I don't think so. Because you know what? I think the even the corals are hardier than we think. They're very hardy. Because look at the whole thing that you just explained just now about all the what the coral has to go through, and from we're cutting them up. Basically, we're cutting them in pieces.
That's true.
We're transitioning them from one tank to another, from the ocean to tanks, from to stores.
Mm-hmm.
They're in there sometimes for a day, a week, a month, a year, till someone buys it, and then so I think honestly, whatever your system is and whatever you have in there that's doing well, keep it there. Even when I get pieces and I see it, like, all right, I got this and now it's not doing fine. I don't want to start changing my whole system and moving things around and changing salt, changing out, changing this, just to appease that one piece that's not doing well. Because the thing is, that one piece is not doing well, but you have 20 other pieces that are doing amazing in your system. And now that you're going to make that change to appease that one that is not doing well, you're going to screw up the other 20. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah.
I don't know about anyone else,
Yeah.
but I feel it on the whole thing. So there's times when I see a piece and it's not, like, I literally just bought a OG bounce mushroom, and it was an OG bounce mushroom. Now it's a speck. And you come to that, you don't even know what it is if you're looking at it. And it felt like a waste of money because it's gone. But at the same time, I'm not going to change my whole system just for that one OG bounce mushroom and screw up this beautiful one that I have over here. It's not going to happen. So I let it just go. I'm like, that's it. You're gone.
Yeah.
That
is so true. Yeah,
that's September.
Yeah, like temperature.
Yeah.
I keep mine at 78. That's where I keep it. In this room. One of these days I'll give you guys a quick little view of where my tank is. So on both sides of the wall, it's facing outside. Underneath the floor, there's a porch below my tank. Right. So this room is generally colder in the wintertime, and it gets pretty warm in the summer. So I usually have the AC running in here. So I try to keep my temp at around 78. However, in the winter, it's a struggle to keep it at 78. It's usually dipping down a little bit. I keep it in range, just like everything else. All the other parameters, I know we kind of like just set it here. But the aquarium recommendation from Bulk Reef Supply is 68 to 80. I think that's fair. That's kind of like what happens with my tank. I really get nervous and anxiety takes over a little bit when my tank
68 or 70?
78, 76 and 80. Sorry, I don't know if I misspoke.
Yeah.
So 76 and 80. Now, whenever my tank goes below or above any of those ranges, I start panicking. All right, I don't think it has gone below 76. Or I think maybe in the summer, maybe once or twice over 80, maybe 81. But that's
See, and that's where we have the difference, because my tank, I keep my tank 78, and and the 78 worked. In the wintertime, I have no problem with my
Yeah.
tank. I have a 1,000 watt heater in the display. I
Yeah.
have a 500 watt in the sump. And if one go, I have it just redundancy. If one fails, the other will work. And, you know, but I keep my tanks are always 78. Summertime, it's where my problem lies. I've had my tank go up to, I want to say, 83 before, 83, 84 degrees, which is way, way too hot, I think, personally, because when I see it start going up there, I get really, really nervous and I start
Mhm.
working. Um, and I just get worried, but I don't have an AC. I tried to put an AC in, and the breaker tripped, and you know I have so much other stuff going on, like so much plugs and outlets on it. The breaker tripped, so that's something I definitely need to work on. I am going to get a couple fans, those clip-on fans that you put on the top, see if that helps any. I bought a Vornado, so I'm going to try that this summer also, see if that helps. But I mean, when it did get to those temperatures, again, I think my corals are so healthy, it hits the temperature and nothing. I'm looking for wood. Knock on nothing.
Is this
So, I mean, I think if corals are healthy enough, you can get away with a lot of mistakes in this hobby. So I had my temperature go to 84, where I'm sure in someone else's tank where 84 is detrimental.
yeah.
88, that tank, the things look great. I'm like, you know, I come in here like, please, 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 please. Before I get to the door, I'm praying like, please let everything okay, please let everything. And they're usually fine. I haven't lost any fish, knock on wood again. Any corals due to heat, knock on wood again. But cold, I never worry about cold because this 1,000 watt, it brings the temperature up like as soon as it goes down, right back up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, oh, don't need 1,000 watt. That's too much. That's overkill. I rather it come on and go off immediately instead of
Yeah.
having a 200 or 300 watt and it's like running, trying to catch up. So I'll stick with my 1,000 watt, even though everyone says it's overkill. I like it. That's what I use,
That is
and to each their.
that, that is a fair assessment and great advice because I do have two heaters in my system as well. And I guess I said again in the winter time it's cold in here, but with both those heaters it keeps it where within range of where it's supposed to be. So which is good. Stability is what we're going for. And we're talking about we went on calcium, we went on out, we mag. What's your mag? Did you go over your mag?
So my mag
Where did you go?
is 1,500.
15.
15.
Mm.
So on this sheet, it says max should be
12,
recommendation between
12
1,200 and
and
1,400.
1,400.
And
Exactly.
it says the typical surface ocean value is 1,280.
80. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So can you look up really quick and tell us what does mag actually do? Because mag, I think, helps bind the alk and calc or something of that nature to where it is used properly or used appropriate. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on what I'm saying. I'm throwing things out there at this point. But I think that's what it is, where the mag helps for both of them to be used properly, the corals to use them properly, your alk and your calc. So if your mag is low, the corals won't use as much calcium and alk.
Yeah.
I think.
So it says here, I just Googled it real quick.
Yep.
And it says that magnesium is used to metabolize calcium. So it literally makes it available for the corals to dissolve, to absorb
Okay.
the calcium and
Makes
yeah.
sense.
And that is why they're kind of like interrelated, where if you're using two-part, many a times people won't really dose magnesium because then it's kind of like it's known or said that it is also included in, so it kind of stabilizes
Uh,
both those levels. But
Minus 1,500.
good.
Minus 1,500. I never really. I mean, I paid attention, but not to where it's like I'm looking at it every day. I do have a container where I dose it if it's needed, but I haven't dosed mag in over 3-4 months. It was really low at one point, and I brought it back up, and then now it's for some reason it's just stuck up there in the 1500s, and
Yeah.
I just leave it there.
Mine was
Um,
mine was high as well. It was like 15 something, and then it started going down. I started dosing a little bit, and I realized maybe I was dosing too much, and I let the parameters come down, and it's been at 13, like 1350 somewhere around there. Now it's like 1330
that's
something.
that's where
Yeah,
my ideal number would be. If
yeah,
I could get it 1380 or
yeah,
so would be my ideal number, but
yeah.
I can't get there, so I
I,
just leave
I
it.
stopped dosing it and it's literally like tapered off. I bring my, my algorithm up and show you guys, over the past maybe month or two, it's literally like spot on. It hasn't, increased or decreased. It's just stabilized. So I do see where they're coming from when they're saying that if you are dosing your calcium and alkalinity properly, your MAC kind of tapers off a bit. Again, every tank's different. It depends on what you have in your system. It depends on the salt you're using and all of those things.
Exactly.
All right, what you're dosing, what are the things you're dosing, because we do those other things like trace elements and stuff like that. So we have to take all those things into consideration as well. Let's see, what else is on our list, Rox? What else is on?
Phosphate. This is where I'm like people are looking at me like I'm crazy, like I have three heads when I tell them that my phosphate is what did I say it was 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
2.50. So on my sheet here, reef recommendation is less than 0.03. Ocean surface is 0.005. And mind you, mine is 2.50. Which
Mm-hmm.
is, and I think, like I said, it's higher than that because the thing is, the meter is flashing like crazy. So it might even be higher. But yeah, mine is super high. And I mean, I know I did run out of filter floss. I don't know if that kind of made it. So water was literally running through. I
Mm-hmm.
do have my stick running, but I think it just like nothing was catching the heavy debris. And I do have a lot of fish, and they do poop like crazy, and that might help. There's nothing catching that poop for about a week when I ran out of filter floss. So maybe that's what it is. I'm gonna have it run for about a week or two, test it again, and see if the filter floss actually helped.
Yeah,
Because I think that it's been that I've known.
yeah, I do think that may have had something to do with it.
You have to test yours or no?
I didn't test mine. I haven't tested mine recently, but I can tell you with certainty, my phosphate's always high. All right, my phosphate levels have always. Rox can tell you, my phosphate levels have always been high. All right, I'll even go to like one of the local stores that like Blake's or one of the stores you go to get a water tested, and they'll test the water and they're like, okay, Shelton, your phosphate's it's up there. Your phosphate's up there a little bit, and I'm like, okay. All right, it's not news to me. All right, that's like I literally know that. So it's not. I'm not like, oh my God, I gotta change this. No, I'm not doing that because I'm used to it. I look at the tank, the stuff's doing great. It's not like you know.
Exactly.
I so it's good to know where it's at. Again, I just focus on the swings. Okay, so that's really what I focus on. But my phosphates have always been a little on the higher side. Um,
Um, Ammonia.
Ammonia, not really.
Everyone can say ammonia should be zero.
Yeah. Mm,
Ammonia should be zero
yeah,
because if your ammonia is not zero, you're gonna have trouble with your
yeah,
fish. Your
yeah,
fish
that's
they're not gonna do
yeah.
well if you're having ammonia
You start
in the tank.
in toxic levels. Yeah, that's yeah. So you always strive for levels less than 0.1. That's
Yep.
usually the recommended parameter. Let's see. You know what? Many of us use some of us use the Trident system, using the Apex system, and generally the four probes that usually they come with it or we kind of use um, are calcium, um, alkalinity. Well, that's what the Trident, right? So generally the ones that come with temperature, pH, yeah, temperature, pH, salinity, and ORP, right?
Yep.
Without the Trident, those are the probes. But we know
The
salinity.
Apex itself is The apex itself is your temp, ORP,
ORP,
pH,
pH, and
salinity.
salinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with many a times though, we know what the temp is and where we want to keep it. The salinity, we know what that is and where we want to keep it, right? The ORP, right? Because the pH, we know, pH is the same thing. We know where we want to keep the pH. There's no question about those things. ORP is generally something that we kind of.
Where do you keep your pH? Wait, hold on. Where do you keep your pH?
My pH is I try to keep it at about 8. Try to keep my pH around 8.
So the thing with pH is pH. Everyone is different on the pH because
Yeah. Let's
my
see. What's the recommended?
mine is I keep mine at about 8.3.
Okay.
So reef aquarium recommendations for pH is 7.8, between 7.8 and 8.5 is okay. 8.1, between 8.1 and 8.3 is better.
Okay. And
Surface is between 8.1 and 8.3.
and bulk resupply, their aquarium recommendations is 8.0 to 8.3, right? And the varies the ocean values is 8.1 to 8.3, right? So it's pretty much almost the same there.
I used to have issues with my pH, and I think pH has a lot to do with growth. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know why, but that's what I believe. And I used to struggle getting my pH up. My pH used to be at 7.9.
Mhm.
And it would go every now and then, it'd go 8.1 and then go back down. And one of the fixes that I did was actually run a tube from
The
my
proteins.
spur to outside.
Yes.
And it pulls fresh air from outside, and it helps with the pH in the tank. Because the pH, I think, is like what drops your pH is like all the carbon in the house and stuff like that. So if you have pets, you have a lot of people in the house, it struggles for your pH to go up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I've watched quite a few. We watch videos and we do our readings and stuff, and I see a lot of people say that having a higher pH kind of helps with the growth of corals in your system, and I think it is partially true. It's just like breathing fresh air and eating healthy food and drinking healthy water. I think if you're getting fresh air, the tank needs fresh air, right? The corals, they're out in the ocean. There isn't a restriction on the amount of air that's circulating from the waves and all that. They're getting a more than abundant amount of oxygen. When they're inside the house, the windows are closed and all of that carbon is circulating in the air. Yeah. And if you look at the readings, you can actually tell if you had a large amount of people in your house on a certain day. If you had a bunch of guests in the room with your reef tank any day of the week, you can go back and look at the algorithm and tell when that dip, when the pH went down, and that's generally correlating with when you had a large amount of people when your oxygen levels were low because it was being absorbed.
yep.
So there is some kind of correlation with the activity of humans in the house and fresh air affecting the pH and the growth of corals. That is not a debate. It is hands down a fact.
Got it. Yeah, the pH is important, I think, for coral growth. Honestly, with the up and down, I didn't see any other changes, but once I got it up to the 8.3, 8.4 area, I literally see the corals just kind of like growing rapidly now, that's what everyone wants. So
Yeah.
definitely, if you can get your pH up there, if you can.
Yeah.
Nitrate.
Nitrate recommended zero point 0, or less than 0.0001. Mine is usually more. Right. And the fact is, I have, for a 90-gallon, I have a decent amount of fish in there. It's not overly populated, but I do love fish because it keeps the tank active, and I don't want my coral starving. I don't really, not dosing a lot. You know, I dose, maybe do like shut everything off and dose my tank with certain things like maybe twice a week, maybe. Other than that, the fish, you know, actually eat, and their waste is what makes, you know, fertilize and feeds the corals. So that's what I depend on. So I actually feed my fish quite healthy.
What was
I
BRS
don't really, huh?
recommendation? What was BRS? What was BRS recommendation?
0.0, what, nitrate is up 0 to 10 parts per million.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and 0.1 parts per million. Nitrite is 0.0 and 0.0001.
So my nitrate, let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you, I've literally had my nitrate off the charts. No exaggeration, off the charts. My nitrates were ridiculously high.
Okay.
Um, now, when I tested on the 4th, it was 18.1. And again, I think that relates to me not having filter floss in the rollers. But
Yeah.
I also, because my nitrates were off the charts, where the Salifert could not read it. My Hannah could not read it. The Hannah literally went up and it just started flashing. And then I had to buy a nitrate. It's called a
Denature.
denitrifier.
Yeah.
That word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. So I bought one of those things. I didn't even know about these things until I found out how high my nitrates were. And again, my stuff looked great. But it was off. It was. I wouldn't say they looked great. They looked okay at the time because they didn't have the colors that they do now. So they looked okay. And I went out and bought the denitrifier. It's you put sulfur inside of it, sulfur beads, and the sulfur beads you run it like a regular reactor. The sulfur beads help to bring down your nitrates. I don't know how it does it, but it works. So if anyone out there is having issues with your nitrates crazy, look into this. It's a denitrifier, um, and it runs on sulfur. You can get the sulfur on Amazon. It's like some little yellow beads. Get that one because I did get the other one, and it's horrible because it leaves a lot of dust, regular sulfur things. So definitely get the beads. It doesn't leave as much dust and irritate your corals. But yeah, now it's at 18.1, and I'm sure give it a week or two once this filter floss starts capturing all that heavy debris and the poop and everything, it will go down less. But at the 18.1, my stuff still looks great. I don't know if that would change over time or not, because it's only been like a week and a half since since it's been that high. So, maybe in the long term, it would affect either the growth, the look, the colors on the corals. But for right now, it didn't affect anything. So, but definitely, if anyone is having issues with their nitrates, get a denitrifier and a sulfur denitrifier, and it'll drop your nitrates down. It definitely helps.
All right. So I know we touched on it briefly. I don't know if we have so much to say, so sometimes we kind of like overlap a little bit. But with the ORP, with the Apex systems and with other systems as well, I noticed. To be honest,
Tell you before you go on, I have ORP. I don't know what it does. Okay. Comes with the it comes with the Apex, and I leave it with the Apex. I see the numbers, I don't know what they mean or what they do. So I just like, okay, my ORP is this. I don't know what it does. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. There's plenty
no,
of people out there like, what is that?
you're not. You're not the only one. Because for one, when you go and you're buying test kits, I've never heard someone say, "Yeah, I ran out of reagents for my ORP." Like,
Exactly.
like no one, I don't even think I've ever
Yeah.
seen it on the shelf. So I personally, I never even tested or really used ORP until the Apex. With all honesty, I'm being 100. And since then, we've been looking this thing up and like, what is it? What does it do? What is the importance of this for them to even put it on the system? And ORP actually stands for oxidation reduction potential, right? So we know what oxidation. I'm trying not to get too sciencey with this, right? So we know once you're oxidation, you're actually adding oxygen. So again, ORP is like, it's not one of those things where you should be chasing the numbers per se, but again, you should be looking for fluctuations. So the recommended ORP reading or measurement is between what is it, Rox? ORP
Between
between
250
250 and 400,
yeah,
right? Mine is about 360, right? Around there.
right
That's usually where mine. That's, yeah, mine's about 360. I'm on the phone right now, so I can't. I'm not really,
now.
trying to log out and get messed up. Mine's about 360. Huh?
I'm gonna look at my
Yeah. Yeah. Check yours out. So,
look at my reading because I never use it, so it's not even at my display anymore.
so it's the ability for for corals to to actually absorb nutrients inside of your system. And again, just like you're having your pH level being too low, you need oxygen. So notice it keeps going oxygen, oxygen, oxygen. You need oxygen in your system. We're not saying you should go pump here in your tank or whatever, but you should have fresh air. Now, one of the things though that will affect your ORP reading is if something dies in your tank. If you have low filtration or huh?
I learned that. That I learned.
Yeah. So if something were to die in your tank, or if your filtration, your protein skimmer is not working well, or your filter media needs to be replaced, you can see that. You'll start seeing your ORP level actually changing. So that's something you need to be mindful of. So it is very helpful. So using it, let's not ignore it. If you have access to using the ORP, use it. So.
With the ORP, I pay it no attention. I'm gonna be honest. There has been, I think, 1 or 2 times since I've had this system, I looked at it because someone said to me, oh, if your ORP is high, don't quote me on it, I think it was high or low, but if your ORP changed, that means something died in your tank. And
It's low.
I guess you can tell if a snail died. So if a snail died, you'll see that number fluctuates. I can't remember if it's up or down.
It goes down.
If something
it goes down.
Change. It goes down?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, so I've looked at it once or twice, but I mean, if a snail die, I really don't care. If a fish die, I'm going to see that it's missing. So I really don't pay attention to the ORP. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you guys. That's not the thing I come down here to look for. Iodine.
Iodine, recommended 0.06 parts per million. Iodine is highly underrated, right? Yep. We highly underrate and estimate the potential of using iodine and knowing the levels, because we don't really test. We don't really get a lot of testing for iodine. However, I do use Lugol's, right? I know you do as well, Rox. You have a 150. So how many drops do you use in your system, Rox?
150. So I like to read a lot about it. I don't like to read a lot. I like to read a lot about corals and my don't give me any, like the random quote. It has something to do with the aquarium I read. I'll lay down at night and that's what I'll do. So I read somewhere where one of the elements that's missing in 2-part, because remember, 2-part has no ingredients on there.
On the container. Yeah.
So you don't know what's in there, and a lot of the people that have sent out for ICP test that doses 2-part said that the one thing that was low was iodine.
I've heard
so
that as well.
Iodine is not in there. So what I do, and I've been doing this for a long time now, is do 7 drops of. I think I'm using Kent Lugol's, whatever it's called, iodine, and I do 7 drops in the tank every Sunday, faithfully. So unless I'm not here, which then I kind of just like, whatever, because a lot of people out there don't even dose iodine, and I do. So I do 7 drops every Sunday, and I don't know if it's doing good or I don't know if it's doing bad.
Well, we do have a commonality because every Sunday I dose, my,
Yeah.
Kent, yeah, my little Kent Lugos. And I do maybe about 4 drops. Like I stick to 4 because the tank, with the sump and everything, maybe about 120 gallons maybe, right? So no more than that. So I don't want to, because the thing with iodine is while it is great for metabolism of the corals, it's great for keeping parasites at bay and keeping their tissue strong, and it's just an overall great element. It also makes them color up, like well, that's what we're told, that it keeps some of the corals bright and helps with them populating and things like that. High iodine levels. However, high iodine at extremely high levels is toxic, right, to all living things. So if your levels are too high, it can be counterproductive, where you could be hurting your corals and fish instead of actually helping them. So that's why if you're using iodine as a dip when you're fragging or things like that, you don't want to keep them for too long. I've had cases where I've dipped corals and I've had it dipping for too long in strong iodine water, and they don't do so well afterwards. It's supposed to help, but it wind up being, the opposite. So just be mindful of that. I don't have the numbers to tell you at what range it's actually toxic, but it is recommended that 0.06 parts per million. So I would assume anything outside of that range is dangerous, high or low. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't test nitrite. I think I do have a hand on nitrite tester here, but I
Mhm.
don't test nitrite. To me, it's not as, I mean, every element is important, but it's not something that I don't know. I just don't test. A lot of people do. I don't. I don't know why I don't,
Yeah.
but I just don't.
If you guys test, yeah, let us know. Let us know what you test and what your levels are and what you think. But yeah, I
I
don't test either.
do an ICP test though. Um, I've never done one. I do all my stuff either myself or at my LFS. I have them test and I test and my Trident test. But I've never done, and a lot of people, swears by it. You have guys out here that send out their water sample to ICP test at least, 3 times a year, and they swear by it. But then I've seen other people who, again, say take the ICP test with a grain of salt because they've sent out 2 and it came back with 2 totally different numbers, 2 of the same samples, and it's come back with told both of them came back with different numbers. So you got to take it with a grain of salt or a tank of salt. So that's just my opinion on that. Again, in my opinion, I know people who do water changes with tap water, and their corals do great. I would never recommend to anyone to do do water changes with tap water, or top off with tap water.
Yeah.
Okay, and these people are like, listen, I filled the bucket, and Shelton knows the guy I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
He lives in the area, and he lives in Waterbury, and he catches buckets from the sink, leaves it there, and then pours it in. That's what he uses for tap and water changes. And I'm looking like, what the? I'm over here like making water, making this, and this guy's using tap water to do. But again, these corals they're very, very hardy, and they can acclimate themselves and adjust themselves to under different conditions.
Yeah.
You know, what might work for me might not work for you. So if I give you a piece of coral, don't try to mimic my tank because of that one piece of coral. It's not worth it. If your system is new, by all means. But if you have a running system and your alk has been low, stick with it. Consistency is what I think is key. So if you're consistent at low levels, keep it low. If you're consistent at high levels, keep it high. Your corals will adjust. The problem is when you get that new piece, will it learn to adjust or will it die? And if you try to adjust to appease that one coral that you just got, you're screwing up the rest of your stuff that's doing amazing and loves this water parameter. You know, so that's my take on that. I'm leaving it where it is.
Yeah. That a lot of times we started out talking about chasing numbers, and it is really hard as a reefer to not chase numbers. So we definitely understand. We are we go through the same challenges, to where if you see something that's not doing well, if it's dying or receding, it's not coloring up, or maybe it's losing color, just not doing well in any way, shape, or form, we start looking at our numbers instantly. We start looking at the parameters, seeing where everything is. What did I change? Did I change something? What's my temperature looking like? You'd start looking at your whatever system you're using. You start looking at all those levels. You want to do a water test. Sometimes we want to do a water change. And I always tell people that corals are like people. Okay, they have their days too. Sometimes they're just not doing well. Maybe they're old, right? Maybe the frag you got is from an old colony and it's just not liking, the swings or in your tank, or maybe just the transition to getting to your tank. Maybe there's something eating it in the system, right? Maybe just a regular fish or something. Maybe it's not getting enough food or enough light, right? Don't ever change your entire system for one coral. Okay. I've lost many corals over the years, like anyone else that have been in the hobby. And if it take you have to have a strong heart. It takes a lot of will for you to keep going at times, because it takes a huge bearing on your pockets. All right. So it's not just hard to see them dying. Around his
Right.
face, you turn around like, oh man.
I'm looking
Right. So
at this G bounce, and yeah, everyone knows OGs. I mean, I have one here and it's doing great, so I'm not worriing about it. And the person who I got it from, they gave me, they gave us a
a
great
good
deal
deal.
with.
It was a good deal.
So,
Yeah.
of course, a little sad, but I'm not gonna change
Yeah.
my tank just at this
No.
point. Even when corals are fighting other corals, listen, you got to toughen up. This is the fight. You better win. One of you guys are gonna win, but I'm not gonna start moving things. As you can see, look at it's like things are everywhere, and it's hard for me to start moving things to other places because they're growing too fast and growing into each other. Somebody's got to listen, toughen up.
It's going to
You know what I
happen.
mean?
You're gonna have a little bit of warfare with your corals. And what we can control is just making sure we keep everything stable. If the corals are doing well, they're growing, keep those parameters stable. They are somewhat hardy and they will adjust. And if they have the strength to sustain, then they will flourish and grow. But please don't go on these, use them as a guide. Use them as, to get things in certain ranges. But don't, if your calcium is off by, 5 parts per million or something. Don't go and just start dosing things like crazy. Give it a chance to fluctuate, right? If your temperature is low, don't just go and start, putting crazy heaters in there and turn it up to 90, or anything like that. You want to do it gradual changes, guys. That's like the main thing. You want to just slow and easy, right? I had my salinity checker was messed up. My salinity was low, right? Actually, was it? My salinity was high. Excuse me. My salinity was high, and for me to get it down, I had to slowly do that. All right. It wouldn't have helped me if I were to just go and just drastically start bringing them down. All right. Then that way, they will go into shock and they may not respond very well to that. So you have to take these into consideration, right? It's not good for you to walk out of, a hot house into the cold outside, or vice versa, right? So it's the same thing with corals, right? So you don't want to change things drastically. They're going to respond in a negative way if you do so.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. You want gradual changes. You don't want instant changes. Instant will shock your corals, and it won't be a pretty sight when you see them. You'll know when things are doing bad. Like I said, Look at my nitrates. You know, my nitrates are high, my phosphates are high, and I'll slowly work on it. And when I say slowly, I mean do nothing until it goes down. That's my slow. Guess what? My stuff is doing great. Coral fish, look at these fish. They're fat, super healthy. Look at my corals. Very nice, beautiful colors. So I'm not going to change anything. I'll let it fix itself by doing. I don't do water changes as often as I should, but that'll be a next thing we talk about probably next week. Water changes. But yeah, my nitrates, and that I think is one of the reasons why my nitrates and phosphates might be high. But then again, my corals love it. You know, so I don't leave it, and maybe that's why the OG is not doing well. It's not used to. It's not used to
certain levels. Yeah.
I got Z's Prime up here. Z's Prize. That's new. And I also got an Oregon Torque. That's new, and they're doing amazing. And they came out of the same tank as the OG.
Yeah.
Again,
you win some. Yeah.
The OG. It's a prize. I'm not.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some, guys, and based on the parameters and all the entire overall of your tank, you'll have some tanks where acros will grow like they're on steroids, and while the same people cannot grow mushrooms, or they can't have zoas, and you'll be like, wait, those are supposed to be like easy growing corals, but again, you can't. It's a mixed reef. Having mixed reef systems is very difficult. Because we're getting corals from Hawaii, we're getting stuff from the Red Sea, we're getting things from Indonesia, we're getting things from other parts of the Caribbean, we're getting things from everywhere. All right, so getting stuff from Australia. So guys, you have to understand that these parameters can be a little bit off based on where they're from, the lighting, not just in that part of the ocean, that part of the world, but where it actually got it out of the reefing system. Sometimes you get a piece of coral and it's overshadowed and it loved it there. And now you take it and you're like, oh, it's recommended that it's put in somewhere with high light. Well, normally it would, but it came from somewhere it wasn't getting highlight. So now you put it somewhere and it's getting shocked and you're like, wait a minute, it's this acro is supposed to get highlight. It says it right here. It says it. Well, that's not how it is. All right, they have their own. They have to slowly acclimate to things. All right, and sometimes acclimation process takes a toll too.
I listen to my corals.
Yeah.
That's one of my things. I listen. You can watch them and they'll tell you like if they're doing well in a certain area or not. I've never done an ICP test.
Yeah.
I've never done a PAR reading. And I watch my corals and I know like, all right, it's too high, I need less light. Or it's too low, I need more light. And that's how I do my PAR reading, by what my coral is telling me that it needs. So that's one of the things I literally every morning and every night, I take a look at this thing if I'm home as much as I can, and I pay attention and I just look to see what they want, So that's my take on it, man.
Yeah, that's a big part of being a reefer, guys. It is dedication. It's not just having the funding, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's expensive. And, there are many ways of going about it. You don't have to go and get these expensive monitoring systems or expensive lights or anything like that. The number one thing that you need as a reefer is time and patience. Like, if you have to be involved, if you're an involved reefer, 99% of the time you're going to be doing better than the person that has all the best equipment and is not involved and not paying attention and not being observant. Like, many a times you can see if your corals are not doing well. All right, sometimes they'll go in and they won't come out, or maybe the colors start changing, maybe they're bleaching out a little bit, or they start receding. Look at those things, monitor it. Okay, wow, now you can start looking at parameters. Why is this happening? It's happening to other corals. Maybe there's a parasite. Take it out, dip it, move it to a different location or something, right? So you can't take actions if you don't know that there are actions that need to be taken. And the only way to know that is by observing. So we have to start paying attention to our tanks, all right?
And even though I have all of these, I have the Trident, the Apex, all that stuff, I literally I come down here and I look at my tank as much as I can. So that's just, those are there just as a redundancy, as a safety measure if I'm away or anything like that. But I do my stuff, like, even though I have a Trident, I still have all my test kits under there that I use faithfully, by hand. I don't trust the Trident. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've heard too many horror stories with the Trident where the line is not sucking in reagent, water, or it's always something. So I like to do my stuff by hand, and I think that's the number one thing. If you can, do it by hand. If I'm not home, then I kind of like, I'm scrolling through the Apex to see if there's anything moving or not moving or whatever the case is.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many times, guys, I've caught disasters, things that could have been extremely, huge disasters, before it got worse. Like feeding my system, and I know you're going to be, Rock's going to say the same, like, man, that kind of happened to me too. But leaving your things off and not turning them on back in time and things like that. So again, just want to reiterate that, always make sure that you're monitoring your system, and these parameters are here to help us out. So just use them to the best of your ability, but don't go ahead and start changing things too fast, and chasing numbers. That can have an adverse effect, and no one wants that.
Absolutely agree.
All right.
Takeaway?
Takeaway. Don't chase numbers. Don't chase numbers.
So
They're only guys. They're only guys. Don't chase them.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely agree with you on that one. That was my question, because that was my question in the beginning, and I think we answered my question because, my numbers are crazy, and when I post them online, people are like, "Oh my God, your this is that high, or what's going on? Did you check that the reagent isn't expired?" And a few other things people are telling me to check out before, and I tested again, and sure enough, the number was actually that high. And I'm not gonna chase it to get it. When it gets there, it gets there. But I'm not gonna say, okay, I need to dump 100 gallons out of my tank to get my phosphates down and my nitrates. Not happening. That's not me. It's not gonna happen. I barely do water changes now, so a big one is not gonna happen. So don't chase numbers.
Yeah.
Use them as like Shelton says, and try to get as close to them as possible, because they are, recommended, but take them with a tank of salt.
Mm-hmm.
I see, so
there you go.
If your stuff is doing great, stick with what works.
Exactly. Well said.
We know people who use RO water. Stuff does great. I would never, ever, ever use RO water in my system. Tap water. Sorry, I know tap water, and I would never use tap water for water changes or for top off.
Mm-hmm.
I know people who have their ALC at 4.5. I would probably pass out if I ever came down here and seen my ALC at 4.5. So and their stuff is doing amazing. He's like, dude, I'm leaving it. It's fine. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Victor's like, yeah, my stuff looks great.
That looks great. I remember when he did, I went to his tank, I saw it. The stuff was just growing out of the tank. They literally grow out of the water. That's how it's growing at that low alkalinity. So,
yeah, so it works.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, checking in. We'll catch you next week. And next week, we'll a new topic, just to make sure we're helping everyone and, helping each other as we go along. Also, it's a really tough hobby. It can be expensive. It can be time consuming. But if we all help each other, we can make it happen.
Exactly.
I've had a lot of help from Shelton. I've had a lot of help from Jason. I've had a lot of help from Blake's, Max Reef. I've had help from everybody to get my system today. And I remember when I used to go to people's house and like, oh my God, can I take a photo of your tank? And, never thinking the day would come where people are coming to my house now asking, "Oh my God, can I take a photo of your tank?" And I'm like, "Oh, of course." Now I feel like, woo, and I never thought I would get there, but it's doing amazing. So listen, ask questions, help someone else, and do your research. Do a little research. It'll help.
Exactly. Exactly. Well said, Rox. Well said.
Thanks, Shelton, man. Have a wonderful night,
Yeah,
everyone.
you too, guys. Thanks for checking in. Know what you need to do. Share it with everyone. All right. And see you guys next week. Take care.
Definitely.